Hey, to whoever may need this.
Hey there, and welcome to the third episode of the Hunters Are Here podcast, where we swap family tales from the hilarious to the heartwarming. I'm your host, Ellen, and every week we share the stories that made us laugh, cry, and sometimes roll our eyes at Uncle Bud. Truly, it should be a movie because growing up Hunter is an experience that keeps happening. You may be familiar with my voice from a podcast I do with my hubby, Paul, called E Says, P Says. Currently, we are on hiatus due to the mister going through some health challenges. Thankfully, he is on the mend and we should be bringing you new episodes soon. If you are listening to us for the first time, last week I discussed my family OGs, my grandmother, aka Granddad, and grandfather. I answered some questions about them and shared some moments we had together. So this week I will be discussing my oldest aunt. Her name is Evelyn Maxey. Originally, I was going to discuss two members at a time per episode. However, I have come to realize that each family member needs their own episode because, as I stated in the first one, they are all characters. So take a moment and catch up on any of the platforms you listen to podcasts. And if you are new here, welcome and enjoy. As I also stated in the first episode, this is the aunt that lets no thing stand in her way, and she was always ready with a quick retort. Hence, the hunters are here. Growing up in Brooklyn, I spent a lot of time with my aunt. She always found a way for her to fulfill her aspirations. She wanted a home. She couldn't get one the traditional way. She did owner financing. She and my other family members also followed Reverend Ike for a while, and since he had a Rolls Royce, my aunt said she wanted one too. At the time, she was driving a big yellow two-door Mustang, I think. On the day she purchased her new car, all the drivers were unavailable. So she asked my fave aunt, Auntie Clarine, to drive. All I know is I ended up in the car. I was less than 10 years old and I do not know why I was even there. However, Auntie went to Auntie went to Aunt Evelyn's house and got the car keys. My Aunt C asked me to wait outside at the driveway and make sure there was no traffic and that she didn't hit the walls while she was backing out. Shaking my head as I am looking back on this, she trusted a 10-year-old or less to help. And of course, when we went to get the car, I was like, Auntie, and she said, Yes. You drive? You have a license? She said she didn't drive, but she knew how, and it shouldn't be that difficult. My dad was probably out of town working, and I am not sure where or what my mom was doing, but you'd think I'd call someone. However, this was Auntie C. She would keep me safe. So we drove the car from Bushwick to Crown Heights, where the daycare center was. I would say it was about 20 to a 30-minute drive. However, some of the streets were major fairways. There were turns, mostly rights, and in most of the five boroughs, there are cars parked on both sides of the street. Fortunately, we made it there safely with only one stall, and she parked too. If I'd been older, I am sure I would have been praying and kissing the ground when I got out. And I did And did I say my aunts are all unshakable? Well, I did not find out till we got out of the car how scared she was. Auntie C is my rock. She always knew what you needed and provided it. And she knew I needed to see her confident and self assured as we drove. And yes, Auntie Evelyn had a driveway in Brooklyn. They do exist in certain parts. After the driving ordeal, some time passed. And Evelyn came by our house, and I remember being in my parents' window looking for her Rolls Royce. When she came in, I said, Auntie, where's your Rolls Royce? She said, I was really going to get one. However, because of the streets in New York expensive repairs. It just wasn't practical. So I got a Mercedes instead. Either way, these were cars I had only seen on TV or Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. So it was a win for me. She wanted to run her own daycare center. Well, not sure how old I was, but she became director of John Edward Bruce Daycare and ran it for many years. Since my aunt did not have her own children, her nieces, nephews, and daycare kids were hers. And just like Martin Lawrence, not Martin Luther King, Auntie loved the kids and they loved her right back. I'm not sure if any of my family members realize that by living and sharing their dreams, they made anything feel possible, even becoming president. And thankfully, a few of them saw that happen when Barack Obama was elected the 44th president of the United States. It finally validated all the black families telling their children and grandchildren they could be anything they wanted to be, even president of the United States. And she loved her coffee, black with a little milk and hot, capital HOT. I mean, capital HOT, hot. As a matter of fact, if you are listening and a person of a particular age, you remember the customer that sued McDonald's because her coffee was so hot that she received third-degree burns when she dropped it on her lap. My aunt was mad. She said since that lady sued, she couldn't even get a hot cup of coffee from McDonald's. And the coffee thing is real. When she came to Vegas for my wedding, my dad took us to a really nice Italian restaurant. And when I say nice, it was one where only the person paying gets the menu with the prices. But as elders do, they want coffee with dessert or at the end of a meal. So, of course, they got the coffee wrong a few times. And finally, they made her a fresh pot. She was in heaven. It was hot, capital HOT, and fresh. So I sat with her a bit while she enjoyed her coffee. I think everyone else went to gamble or back to their rooms since they were leaving the next day. It was one of those unforgettable moments. We chatted a bit while she enjoyed her coffee. And that's just a preview on my Aunt Evelyn. And so, similar to the episodes with my grandparents, I have some questions I located on the interwebs to ask about my relatives. Currently, I am telling stories from my point of view. I have reached out to my first cousins, and hopefully, some of them will join me to share their experience. And I can ask them the same questions because everyone has a point of view on family members that is different from mine, or that's just different, period. And I would be more than happy to hear the tea. LOL. So, what is your first memory of them? I would take me and my siblings to church. She'd take us to her daycare center, on bus trips, or to her church's camp. And when I say bus trips, she was an Eastern Star, so it was either a Eastern Star bus trip, a church bus trip, or she was a deaconess. She was on the deacon's board at church, so a deacon's bus trip. So, and again, if you're a person of a particular age, bus trips were a very popular way of raising funds for churches and other organizations. So there were a lot of them, lots of bus trips. How would you describe their personality in 3 words? Loving, boisterous, tenacious. What role did they play in your life growing up? She was loving and encouraging. What is something they always said or a phrase you associate with them? If I tell you a hen dip snuff, you can reach under the wing and get you a dip. And it took me a long time to figure out how that worked. What's one thing they taught you that still sticks with you today? Tenacity. How did they handle hard times or challenges? They figured out a way. If they couldn't go left, they would go right. What's the time they made you laugh really hard? All the time. Auntie always There was never a moment with Auntie that was not funny. However, there was this one particular time we were at Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner. At this point, we knew she was dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia. So we had eaten, and the kids were playing, and she was asking who the kids were, and we would answer. And finally, she was like, "Who is the little Spanish one?" And we just hollered. She was pointing at my nephew, and he is mixed, black and Caucasian, but I gather the funniest part is her descriptor. Only my aunt would have chosen those words. Did you ever have a falling out or disagreement? How did you work through it? Yes, I had the wonderful honor of driving her to DC to my other aunt's wedding, her sister's wedding. She fallen somehow and broken her arm, so she could drive, just not long distances. It was the ride from hell. My is not a wilting flower, so she let it be known I was not driving fast enough. I wasn't passing the cars like she wanted, and to move past the truck drivers because she saw on one of the news shows that they took all kinds of drugs and to stay up, and she didn't want to get into an accident. When we finally got to the hotel, she told everyone I could not drive. Unfortunately, I had to drive her back, and that comment hurt my feelings. I asked my mom to drive her back, and she was like, "Oh no." Fortunately, Aunt Clarine came to the rescue. She canceled her train ticket and rode back with us. By the way, my sister was in the car coming, and she was just waiting for me to pull over and she was just waiting for me to pull over and get out and start walking. It was a very stressful ride. We never did work it through. During that time, you let your elders do what they do. What's something you wish you had said to them or wish they had said to you? I wish she would have apologized for the ride from hell, though in her mind she was giving me some friendly correction. And believe it or not, that was one of the only times she treated me like that. I worked for her from time to time, and she was nothing but kind. But her staff, good lordy. I understood them after that car trip. Have they shaped your views on love, family, or identity? Love should be unconditional, especially for children. Family is always important, and always stay true to yourself. Tell me about a day with them you'll never forget. My aunt used to take us Easter shopping from time to time. We would go downtown Brooklyn to A&S, Woolworths, and many other stores. Besides the shopping, you always knew there would be some good food. McDonald's, Woolworths, or chock full of nuts. It was great. Was there a family tradition or event they made special? Thanksgiving and Christmas. When she had the daycare center, she would have programs on those around those holidays, and there was always good food. What's the funniest or most surprising story involving them? Well, my aunt turned a plane around. I know. I know you don't believe what you heard. My aunt turned a plane around that was on the tarmac heading to take off. What happened was my grandmother, as I expressed in the previous episode, passed away the Christmas, or not the Christmas, that early the next year after my father's mother, my other grandmother passed. So granddad passed after my grandmother. And my sister and I didn't go. We stayed with a family member, but most of the other family went. And my aunt, true to form, was late for the plane. And my cousin and my favorite aunt, so her daughter and my favorite aunt, got off the plane to wait for her so that the plane wouldn't take off. Well, the plane took off. Well, not didn't take off, but the plane started taxiing towards the runway. And my cousin and my aunt said that when my aunt Evelyn came up to the podium to speak to the people, she was like, "Look, my mother has passed, and I know that you're not gonna let this plane leave me here. So I don't. So I miss my mother's funeral. So I'm gathering that that plane was the one that was gonna get everybody into Chicago in time for services. So I don't know who my aunt called. I don't know what she did besides that, but they turned that plane around. And sure enough, like the family members that were still on the plane, as I've come to find out, a lot, almost everybody in the New York area was on the plane. My parents, my mother, my father, another couple of aunts and uncles were on there. I think almost everybody was flying on this particular flight. So they turn the plane around and they get back to the gate. They open the doors, and of course, my father's like, "That's nobody but Evelyn." And sure enough, that plane wasn't gonna leave me, not when I need to bury my mother. And that's, as I've said before, that's Aunt Evelyn. She is not gonna let anything, not a thing, tarry her. And she turned the plane around. Now this was before 9/11. I'm not sure um what the consequences would have been after 9/11. They probably would have arrested her, which wouldn't have gone well for them either. But um before 9/11, my aunt turned the plane around. So, do you have a photo or item that reminds you of them? What's behind the story? I have many photos of my aunt. From time to time, I'll look back on them and be like, Auntie was there? However, the one that is most special is my wedding day. My husband is originally from Los Angeles, and we spent our first few years of marriage on the West Coast. At the time, they had specials for less than $300 to go to Vegas, get married, and stay in a hotel. It was a long weekend. I think it was like 3 days, 2 nights, something like that. And my mother at the time kept asking when we were getting married, and I happened to be looking in the paper one day, and I said to my husband, "Let's do this." And he was like, "Okay." Since we didn't have funds at the time, and the father is supposed to pay for the wedding, lol, I called my dad and he sent the funds. Paul or I had ever been to Vegas, so this was exciting for us. Once everything was booked, my mom asked when was it taking place. I let her know, and she said that she and my dad might come. I was like, cool, it would be a plus. I also asked if my fave aunt Clarine was coming, and my mom was like, I don't know. Well, surprise, surprise. My parents, brother, and three aunts showed up. And one of those aunts was my aunt Evelyn. Excuse me. And one of those aunts was my Aunt Evelyn. It made my little wedding day special. And Paul got to meet my Aunt Bobby for the first time. That's my aunt. She's younger than my Aunt Evelyn, and we'll discuss her a couple of episodes later. But she is lived in Chicago, so that's one of the reasons Paul had not met her before this point. What would a perfect day with them look like? There's always one thing a hunter sister is going to do: find some good food to eat. And when my aunt had her daycare center, she found the best cook. Her name was Miss Hunt, and that woman had gifted hands. Whenever my aunt would have various celebrations or programs for Thanksgiving, Christmas, Martin Luther King, or Black History Month, her center would be packed because Miss Hunt was cooking. Oh, I would love when my aunt would come and get us from school and take us to the center and say, "Wash your hands and go to the kitchen. I'll ring Miss Hunt to get you something to eat." Best words ever. How are you like them and how are you different? I like them because family and bringing the traditions we had forward are important to me. I am different in that I'm a little quieter and reserved about the way I go about moving in life. She was a carry a big stick and talk loud person. I'm the opposite, mostly. What part of their legacy do you try to carry forward? Education, being important, and helping others. If they could be a guest on your podcast, what would you ask them? I would ask her if I was her favorite niece, lol. And I would ask how she accomplished all of the things that she did. How do you think they'd want to be remembered? She would want to be remembered as a trailblazer that left an impact on the children she taught, her family, and the people she met. In one sentence, how would you sum up their impact on your life? I am not sure I can do it in one sentence, but I will do my best. I was a mover and a shaker in a time that women were just coming into their own. I'm proud to be one of her descendants. Did or do you did or do you have an Aunt Evelyn in your family or life? Where they or are they as exciting and charismatic as mine? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Now that I have discussed my eldest aunt, I will stop right here and pick it up next week where I discuss my second eldest aunt, Pauline Hayton. Thanks so much for joining us this week. Please make sure to subscribe to The Hunters Are Here on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. You can also check out Facebook under Mock Media Group, as well as our website, mockmediagroup.com, where you can listen and learn about all things mock. Want to do more? Support us by filling our cup at buymeacoffee.com/mock media group. Or like, follow, and subscribe on any podcast platform so you don't miss an episode.
Hey, to whoever may need this nugget of encouragement, things will be alright, so quit your worrying. I get it, the odds seem stacked back against the wall, but even consider it such, know you'll stand tall. Sit and watch from the sidelines, one too many times. Wicked games to play, make me wanna lose my mind. Found solitude, knowing it'll be over soon. Ever need a boost, count on me for the 1-2. Trouble don't last when the tough get